He came home, and someone else opened his door from the inside. No argument, no explanation. Just one sentence. Everything's already signed. They didn't throw him out. They sent him somewhere people don't come back from. A broken cabin deep in the forest, where the last man who tried to live there didn't survive the winter. But the worst part wasn't the cold. It was realizing this wasn't a mistake. It was planned, and someone in town was already watching, waiting to see how long he would last. Then the storm came, and through the snow, he saw people about to die just beyond his door. That night, he had one choice: hunt the man who set him up, or save lives that would cost him everything. What he chose is the reason that cabin still has a light on today. If you're listening right now, tell me where you're watching from. Share what you felt after this story, and help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more stories like this can be told. May God guide you through every storm and keep your light from ever going out. Elliot Granger stood on the front steps of his house, his breath barely visible in the cold morning air. It wasn't the cold that made him still. It was the sound of a lock turning from the inside. The door opened. A man Elliot had never seen before stood there, mid-30s, soft around the edges, wearing someone else's comfort like it belonged to him. Behind him, the hallway looked unchanged. Same pale walls, same narrow table near the entrance, same house, just not his anymore. "You're looking for someone?" the man asked, uncertain. Elliot didn't answer right away. His eyes moved past the man, scanning the interior with the quiet precision of someone who had spent years expecting danger in ordinary spaces. Nothing was out of place. That was the problem. Footsteps approached from deeper inside the house, slower, heavier. Familiar. A Douglas Keene appeared in the doorway behind the stranger. He looked older than Elliot remembered. Not just older, smaller somehow. Shoulders drawn in, as if the world had been pressing down on him for years. His thinning gray hair was combed carefully, like he still believed appearances could hold things together. "Elliot," Douglas said. No surprise in his voice, no relief, just acknowledgement. Elliot shifted his gaze to him. "What is this?" Douglas sighed, the kind of sigh that came before explanations people didn't want to hear. "We talked about this," he said. "You were away. Things needed handling." Elliot's eyes flicked once more inside the house. The man at the door stepped aside awkwardly, unsure whether he was intruding or being intruded upon. "I didn't sell," Elliot said, his voice low, even. Douglas stepped forward, holding a folder. "Papers. Neat. Official." "You signed," he replied. "Power of attorney. Years ago. I acted in your best interest. Best interest." The phrase sat in the air like something rehearsed too many times. Elliot didn't reach for the papers. "Who lives here?" he asked. Douglas hesitated, then gestured lightly toward the man. "New owners. It's done, Elliot." No apology, no anger, just a conclusion. For a moment, nothing moved. The wind shifted slightly along the street, carrying the distant hum of a town that had already moved on. Elliot looked at Douglas, not searching for guilt, not expecting truth, just measuring. Then he nodded once. A small motion. "Final." "What do I get?" he asked. Douglas blinked, almost surprised by the question. "There's property," he said. "Up north. Land. A structure on it. It's clean. No liens. It's yours now." Elliot took the folder at last, flipping it open without urgency. Coordinates more than an address. No town listed. Just distance. Just isolation. He closed it. Behind him, Rex shifted his weight. The German shepherd had remained silent the entire time, standing slightly ahead and to Elliot's left. His coat, dark and dense, caught what little light there was. One ear angled forward, the other not quite matching. A small imperfection that made his stillness feel deliberate rather than trained. Rex didn't bark. He watched. Always watched. Elliot rested a hand briefly against the dog's neck. Not comfort. Confirmation. Then he looked back at Douglas. "That all?" he asked. Douglas nodded. "It's better this way," he said, softer now. "You need somewhere quiet." Elliot almost smiled. Almost. But it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I do." He turned. No raised voice, no slammed door, just the sound of boots on the wooden steps as he walked away from the house that still looked exactly like it used to. They didn't speak as they crossed the edge of town. Elliot carried the folder in one hand, loose, like it didn't matter whether he dropped it. The streets were familiar, but the feeling wasn't. It was like walking through a place that remembered you differently. People noticed him. Of course they did. A man like Elliot didn't blend, not with the way he moved, not with the way his eyes never settled. But no one stopped him. No one asked questions. That, more than anything, told him enough. Halfway down the road, he slowed. Not because he was tired, because something didn't fit. Rex stopped too, instinctively, his body angling just slightly ahead again. Elliot didn't turn immediately. He listened first. A voice behind him. Low, controlled. Douglas. Another voice answered. Not local. Elliot turned just enough to see them. Douglas stood near the edge of the sidewalk, speaking to a man Elliot hadn't noticed before. Taller than Douglas, lean, posture straight without being rigid. Dark coat, gloves still on despite the mild cold. His head tilted slightly as he listened. Then he looked up. Straight at Elliot. No hesitation, no confusion. Just recognition. Elliot held the gaze for a second. 2. 3. The man didn't look away. Rex let out a low, almost inaudible sound. And not a growl. Something quieter. A warning meant only for one person. Elliot broke eye contact first. Not because he had to. Because he'd seen enough. "Come on," he said quietly. Rex moved with him. They didn't look back again. But Elliot could feel it. The weight of that stare, following him past the last row of houses, past the sign that marked the edge of town, and into the road that led north, toward whatever waited out there. Morning did not arrive so much as it revealed itself. The storm had burned out some time before dawn, leaving behind a silence so complete it felt staged. The coastline stretched pale and rigid under a sheet of frozen light. Snowdrifts had reshaped the ground, burying edges, smoothing out the violence of the night. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with heat and something metallic. Jack had not slept. Nova lay near the stove, wrapped in 2 layers of wool blankets. The blood had stopped spreading, but it hadn't stopped existing. It clung to her fur in dark, stiff patches. Her breathing came shallow, uneven, like something she had to remember to do. The 2 surviving puppies lay against a folded towel, their movements small and uncertain. One trembled constantly. The other barely moved at all, except for the faint rise and fall of its chest. Rex had not left the door, and he wasn't guarding it the way he used to, alert, reactive. This was quieter. He simply stood there, facing outward, as if waiting for something that hadn't decided whether to come back. Jack knelt beside Nova, pressing a cloth gently against the wound along her flank. The entry was clean. Too clean. No tearing, no jagged edge. Whoever had taken the shot had done it with precision and restraint. Not a hunter. Not a mistake. "Hold on," he muttered, though he didn't expect her to understand the words. Her eye shifted slightly toward him. Not trust, not fear. Recognition. It unsettled him more than anything else. A knock came mid-morning. Solid, measured, not hesitant. Jack didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't need to. Whoever had fired the night before wouldn't announce themselves like this. He opened the door halfway. A Mason Reed stood on the porch, already brushing snow from his coat before being invited in. He moved like a man who had spent decades working around cold, efficient, economical, and entirely unimpressed by it. His back had bent slightly with age, but his eyes hadn't softened. "You look worse than the storm," Mason said, stepping inside without waiting. Jack stepped aside. Mason's gaze swept the room once, then settled on Nova. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. "Still alive?" he said instead. "For now." Mason crouched beside the dog, his movements slower, but steady. He didn't touch her immediately, just watched, assessed. "Military shot," he said after a moment. "Not civilian." Jack didn't respond. Mason looked up at him once, briefly, then stood. "I'll call Claire." Jack nodded. "Doctor." A Claire Bennett arrived an hour later, her truck tires crunching sharply over packed snow. She stepped out with a kind of quiet urgency that didn't come from panic, but from habit. Her auburn hair was pulled back tightly, strands escaping at the edges from the wind. Her expression stayed focused even before she saw what she'd been called for. Inside, she paused only long enough to take in the scene. Then she moved. "Clear me space," she said, already setting down a compact medical case. Jack shifted the table aside. Mason fed more wood into the stove without being asked. Claire knelt beside Nova, gloved hands moving with controlled precision. She cut away the matted fur around the wound, revealing a small, dark entry point. Her brow tightened slightly. "No exit," she said. "Bullet's still in." "Can you get it out?" "Not here," she replied. "Not without killing her faster." She continued working, cleaning, stabilizing, checking reflexes. Then she paused. "Hold her steady." Jack placed one hand along Nova's neck, the other bracing her side. Claire passed a scanner slowly along the dog's shoulder. A faint beep. She moved it again. Another beep. Slightly different tone. Claire frowned. "That's not right." Jack looked at her. "Microchip?" "Yes, but not registered." She passed the scanner again, slower this time, her eyes narrowing as she read the tiny display. "There's an ID string," she said, "but no owner data, no registry match. It's like—" She hesitated. Like someone wiped everything except the access key." Jack's jaw tightened. "Can that be done?" "Not legally." She angled the scanner again, testing different positions. "It's still active," she added. "Whatever system it belongs to, it hasn't been disconnected." The room shifted, not physically, but in weight. Jack felt it settle somewhere behind his ribs. "She's still on something," Mason said quietly. Claire didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Jack. "Who else knows she's here?" Jack didn't respond immediately. That hesitation was enough. The man arrived just after noon. No engine roar, no sudden movement, just the sound of tires stopping on the far side of the yard, deliberate and unhurried. Rex was already at the door before Jack stood. not barking. Watching. Jack stepped outside before the knock came, and the man stood a few feet from the porch, hands visible, posture relaxed in a way that suggested confidence rather than carelessness. He was in his early 40s maybe, tall but narrow through the shoulders. His coat was dark, well-fitted, without logos or markings. Clean. Too clean for this place. His eyes were pale blue, not cold, just distant. "Mr. Callahan," he said, as if confirming something already known. Jack didn't answer. "I believe you came into possession of a dog last night," the man continued. "Possession," Jack repeated. A figure of speech. The man reached into his coat slowly, carefully, and produced a folded envelope. "No trouble," he said. "We'd like to resolve this quietly." He held it out. Jack didn't take it. "How much?" he asked instead. The man's mouth curved slightly. "Enough." Jack glanced at the envelope once, then back at him. No." The answer came without weight. Just final. The man didn't react immediately. He studied Jack instead, the way someone might study a structure before deciding whether to dismantle it. Then he nodded once. "That's unfortunate." He lowered the envelope. "You don't understand what you're holding," he said. Jack's expression didn't change. "Then explain it." The man considered that, then shook his head slightly. "No, I don't think I will." A pause. The wind shifted, carrying a thin layer of snow between them. Then the man said, almost gently, "You're not holding a dog, Mr. Callahan." His eyes moved past Jack, toward the cabin. "You're holding something that was already erased." Jack felt Rex step closer behind him. A silent presence. The man turned, walked back to his vehicle, and left without another word. No threat, no urgency, just certainty. Internet, Claire looked up the moment Jack stepped back in. "Well?" she asked. Jack closed the door. "They're not guessing anymore," he said. He reached for his phone. There was one number he hadn't used in years. He stared at it for a second longer than necessary, then pressed call. It rang twice. A voice answered. Flat. Alert. "Kessler." Jack didn't bother with greeting. "I need you to run an IDE string," he said. "Off-grid. No logs." A pause. "Where did you get it?" Jack looked at Nova. "At my door." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "Send it." Jack ended the call. Across the room, Nova's eye opened slightly again. Not fully. Just enough. And for a moment, Jack had the distinct, unwelcome feeling that whatever had been erased had not forgotten. Elliot didn't wait for the storm to worsen. He left the cabin before the second night settled in. Not out of fear. Out of calculation. The truck was still where he'd left it, half dusted with snow, the tracks already softening under fresh fall. Rex jumped in without hesitation this time, but he didn't settle the same way. His posture stayed higher, more alert, like something unfinished was still behind them. Elliot drove without turning on the radio. The road felt different in reverse, shorter, but heavier. The town hadn't changed. That was the unsettling part. Same quiet streets, same smoke rising from chimneys, same people moving through their routines like nothing had shifted. But when Elliot stepped into the diner, he felt it immediately. Not hostility, not warmth. Recognition. The kind that arrives before introductions. "Tisha." A man at the counter paused mid-sip, his eyes flicking once toward Elliot, then away. Two women at a corner table lowered their voices, not abruptly, but enough to let silence fill the gap. Elliot walked in anyway. Rex stayed outside. Tied near the post. Not because Elliot didn't trust him inside, but because he trusted him more outside. Watching. The diner smelled of coffee and grease. Normal things. Familiar things. But the atmosphere wasn't. Behind the counter stood a man Elliot hadn't seen before. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Lean, but not weak. His shoulders carried a kind of quiet endurance, like someone who had worked the same place long enough to stop questioning it. His hair was gray, combed back, and his eyes, sharp. Too sharp for someone serving food. "You're new," the man said, not asking. Elliot sat at the counter. "Just passing through," he replied. The man didn't smile. "No one passes through here," he said, pouring coffee into a chipped mug and sliding it over. "Wade Larkin." Elliot nodded once. Elliot. Wade didn't ask for more. He didn't need to. For a few moments, nothing happened. Just the quiet scrape of utensils, the hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the back. Then Wade leaned slightly closer. "You're staying up north," he said. Not a question. Elliot didn't react. Wade's eyes narrowed just enough to confirm what he already knew. "That place," Wade continued. "People don't fix it." Elliot took a sip of coffee. "It's not fixed," he said. Wade studied him. Then, almost as an afterthought, "They don't come back from it either." The door opened behind Elliot. A gust of cold air followed someone in. Elliot didn't turn immediately. He heard the footsteps first. Light, quick, uneven. Then a voice. "Hey, sorry. Do you know the trail that cuts through Pine Ridge?" A woman. Elliot turned. She stood near the door, brushing snow from her jacket. Mid-30s. Tall, but not imposing. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands escaping in a way that suggested she hadn't had time to care. Her face carried a kind of tension. Not fear exactly, but urgency. She looked at Elliot, like he was the only one who might answer. "Iris Cole," she said quickly. "I'm trying to find the old logging road." Elliot studied her for a second. Then he shook his head slightly. "Don't take it," he said. Iris frowned. "Why?" Elliot didn't answer right away, because he didn't know how much truth to give. "Because it doesn't go where you think it does," he said finally. Iris held his gaze, searching for something. Confirmation, maybe. Then she nodded once. "Thanks." She didn't argue. She didn't ask more. She just left. The door closed behind her. Wade watched the entire exchange without interruption. Then he wiped the counter slowly. "You should have told her more," he said. Elliot looked at him. "Would it have mattered?" he asked. Wade didn't answer. That was answer enough. Later, Elliot walked the edge of town. Not aimlessly. Looking. Patterns. Connections. Gaps. And then he saw them. Across the street, near the hardware store. Douglas. Standing with someone. Elliot slowed, but didn't stop. He didn't need to get closer. The man Douglas was speaking to stood out immediately. Taller than most. Not bulky, but precise. Everything about him felt intentional. His coat was dark, clean, fitted. Gloves still on, like he didn't intend to stay long. His posture wasn't relaxed. It was controlled. The kind of control that didn't come from discipline. It came from ownership. And Douglas spoke first, gesturing slightly, explaining something. The man listened. Then he turned and met Elliot's eyes again. Same man from before. No hesitation, no confusion. This time, there was something else. Recognition. Elliot crossed the street. Not fast, not slow. Just enough to make the approach deliberate. Rex appeared at his side. Silent, moving in sync without command. Douglas saw him first. His expression tightened. "Elliot," he said, voice lower now. Elliot didn't respond. His attention was on the other man. Up close, the details sharpened. Late 40s, clean-shaven. A face that didn't show much, but when it did, it wasn't emotion. It was decision. "Victor Shaw," the man said calmly, extending a hand. Elliot didn't take it. Victor didn't seem offended. He let his hand fall naturally, as if this was expected. "I've heard about you," Victor continued. Elliot tilted his head slightly. "From him?" he asked, nodding toward Douglas. Victor smiled faintly. "From Patterns," he said. That word sat wrong. Elliot's eyes narrowed. "Patterns of what?" Victor stepped slightly closer, not aggressive, not invading. Just enough to make the distance intentional, of where people end up, he said. Silence followed. Short. Heavy. Then Elliot spoke. "That cabin," he said. "What is it?" Douglas shifted. Victor didn't. "It's land," Victor replied. "Unused. Forgotten." Elliot held his gaze. "That's not what it looks like." Victor's smile didn't change. "No," he agreed. "It isn't." A pause. Then, "You're not the first one who's been sent there." The words landed clean. No emphasis. No threat. Just fact. Rex moved. Not forward. Sideways. Positioning himself slightly between Elliot and Victor. His body still. Eyes locked. Victor glanced down at the dog briefly. Then he back up. "Good animal," he said. Elliot didn't react. Victor continued. "People who go up there," he said, "they tend to disappear." Douglas exhaled sharply. "That's enough," he muttered. Victor ignored him. "They get something they can't manage," he added. "Isolation, environment, mistakes." Elliot's jaw tightened. "You mean they die?" Victor tilted his head slightly. "I mean," he said, "the outcome is consistent." Another pause, longer this time. Elliot stepped closer. "What are you running?" he asked quietly. Victor looked at him for a moment. Then, "A system," he said. Elliot didn't blink. Victor's voice dropped just slightly. "Places like that cabin, they serve a purpose." "Which is?" Elliot asked. Victor's eyes flicked briefly toward Douglas, then back. "To let things resolve themselves," he said. That was it. That was the answer. No more explanation needed. Elliot stepped back, not retreating. Understanding. Rex held his position for a second longer, then moved with him. Victor watched them go. Didn't call out. Didn't follow. Because he didn't need to. Elliot didn't speak until they reached the edge of town. Then, "They didn't send me there to live," he said. Rex didn't respond, but he stayed close. Closer than before. Elliot looked back once. Victor was still there, standing in the same place, watching. Not with curiosity, with certainty. The storm didn't arrive. It escalated. By late afternoon, the wind had already begun shifting. Sharp, unpredictable gusts that didn't follow a pattern. Snow no longer fell in quiet layers. It came sideways now, cutting across the clearing in thin, violent streaks. Elliot stood just outside the cabin, scanning the tree line. Something about the air felt wrong. Not just weather. Timing. Rex stood beside him, shoulders tense, fur rippling under the pressure of the wind. His ears twitched constantly, catching things Elliot couldn't. "Inside," Elliot muttered. They stepped back in, just as the first real hit came. Wind slamming into the cabin walls like a physical force. The structure groaned in response. Wood complaining under stress, it wasn't built to handle anymore. Elliot didn't try to fight it yet. He reinforced. Boards wedged tighter. Loose planks nailed down where they could still hold. The fire kept low, controlled. Survival wasn't about comfort. It was about not losing ground. Then Rex moved, not toward the door, toward the side wall. He froze there, staring through a gap where the wood didn't quite meet. Elliot followed his line of sight. At first, nothing. Then, a flicker. Light. Weak. Unsteady. Out in the trees. Elliot didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, shoved the door open, and stepped into the storm. Rex was already ahead of him. The snow swallowed sound. Every step Elliot took felt uncertain, the ground shifting beneath layers of ice and powder. The light flickered again, then vanished, then appeared further ahead, not moving steadily. Struggling. "Hey!" Elliot shouted. The wind tore the word apart. Then a shape emerged, a figure stumbling forward, then collapsing. Elliot reached them in seconds. A man. A mid-40s, broad but weakened, his movements sluggish. Snow clung to his beard, his face pale under the cold. "Stay with me," Elliot snapped, grabbing him under the arms. Another figure behind him. Iris. Her eyes locked onto Elliot instantly. "You," she gasped. "I tried. He—" "No talking," Elliot cut in. "Move." Rex circled them once, then took position slightly ahead, guiding. They made it back to the cabin by instinct more than direction. Inside, everything tightened. The space was too small now. Too fragile. Elliot laid the man, Martin Cole, near the fire. His breathing was wrong. Too shallow. Too slow. Elliot pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse. Weak. "Help me," he said to Iris. She knelt immediately. Hands shaking but steady enough to follow direction. Keep him warm. Not fast. Slow. Elliot adjusted Martin's position, then paused. Something in the angle. The breathing. A flicker of memory cut through him. Different place, different time. Same mistake. He moved too quickly. Adjusted the airway wrong. Martin's chest stuttered. Then stopped. Silence. Iris froze. "Why isn't he—" "Stop!" Elliot snapped, but his voice had shifted. Not calm anymore. Focused. Too focused. He repositioned Martin again. Slower this time. Measured. Controlled. 2 fingers. Breath. Wait. Nothing. Then, a shallow inhale. Martin coughed weakly, air dragging back into his lungs like it didn't want to return. Elliot exhaled once. Short. Controlled. But something in his eyes had changed. Not fear. Recognition. The cabin cracked. A sharp, violent sound above them. Elliot looked up just as part of the roof gave way. Wood snapping under pressure. A section collapsing inward. Snow poured through the opening, carried by wind that followed like it had been waiting. The fire sputtered. The temperature dropped instantly. "Move!" Elliot barked. They dragged Martin toward the far wall, away from the collapse. His snow covered half the floor now, the wind forcing its way inside. The cabin wasn't shelter anymore. It was failing. Rex barked once, sharp, then turned toward the door. Not the storm. Something else. Elliot saw it too. Through the broken doorway. Movement. Not struggling. Not lost. Deliberate. A figure stepped into view. Victor Shaw. He didn't rush. Didn't shout. Just stood there. Coat untouched by the storm. like he had chosen the exact moment to arrive. Behind him, another man. Gun raised, Rex moved instantly. He didn't wait. He lunged forward, intercepting the angle before the weapon fully aligned. A shot cracked through the storm. Rex twisted mid-motion, taking the impact across his shoulder. Not a clean hit, but enough to stagger him. He didn't fall. He held position. Between Elliot. Between Victor. The man with the gun hesitated. Victor raised a hand slightly. Not to stop him, and to control him. No rush, Victor said calmly. Elliot stepped forward. Every part of him pulled in one direction. Forward, toward Victor. Toward the man who had set this in motion. But behind him, Martin struggled to breathe. Iris whispered something under her breath, barely holding it together. The cabin groaned again. Another crack forming. Time didn't slow. It compressed. Victor tilted his head slightly. Still time, he said. Not a threat. An invitation. Elliot's jaw tightened. He could move now. Take 2 steps. Close the distance. End it. Or, he turned. Not toward Victor. Back to Martin. No words. No hesitation. Just action. Rex shifted with him, despite the injury, staying between Elliot and the door. Victor watched. For a long moment. Then he stepped back. Into the storm. Gone as quietly as he came. Inside, everything still felt like it was breaking. But Elliot didn't look up again. He focused. Hands steady now. Breathing measured. Fix what can be fixed. Hold what can be held. Outside, the storm kept coming. Inside. He chose. The storm didn't end all at once. It unraveled. By morning, the wind had lost its edge. The snow still fell, but softer now. Like the forest had decided it had done enough damage for one night. Inside the cabin, the silence felt different. Not empty. Occupied. Elliot sat against the far wall, eyes open, though he hadn't truly slept. The fire had burned low, but it was still alive. Just enough to hold the cold back from taking everything. Across from him, Iris leaned over Martin, her hand resting lightly on his chest, as if she needed constant proof that he was still breathing. He was. Barely, but enough. Rex lay near the door. His breathing was steady, but slower than usual. The bandage Elliot had wrapped around his shoulder was already stained through, dark against the fabric. The dog didn't move much, but his eyes remained open, tracking the room, the door, Elliot. Always working, even now. By midday, the storm had broken completely. Light returned, not bright, not warm, but clear. Elliot stepped outside. The clearing had changed. Snow buried most of what had been there before. Tracks gone. Signs erased. Even the scars in the ground softened under the white. If someone walked through now, they wouldn't know that anything had happened. That was the point. Elliot stood still for a long moment. Then he looked back at the cabin. It shouldn't have held. Not like that. Not with everything stacked against it. But it had. And so had they. Martin woke slowly. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden movement. No gasping. Just a shift in breathing. Then a low, rough inhale. Iris froze when she felt it. "Martin," she whispered. His eyes opened halfway, unfocused at first. Then they settled. On her. Then on Elliot. For a second, something passed between them. Not gratitude. Not yet. Understanding. "You didn't leave," Martin said, voice thin. Elliot shook his head slightly. No. Martin let out a weak breath that might have been a laugh. Most people would have, he muttered. Elliot didn't answer, because that wasn't the part that mattered. They stayed through the afternoon, not because it was safe, because moving too soon would have killed him. Elliot rationed what little he had. Water melted from snow, heat kept low but constant, movements controlled, deliberate, no wasted energy, no wasted chances. At some point, Iris stepped outside. Elliot noticed, followed a few moments later. She stood near the edge of the clearing, staring toward the trees where the storm had swallowed them the night before. I saw it from there, she said quietly. Elliot didn't ask what. The light, she continued. From the cabin. He looked at her. She didn't turn. If that hadn't been there, her voice caught just slightly. We wouldn't have made it another hour. Elliot glanced back at the structure behind them. The broken roof, the patched walls, the thing that was never meant to save anyone. It wasn't for you, he said. Iris shook her head. Doesn't matter, she replied. That was it. That was the moment. Elliot looked at the cabin again. Really looked. For the first time, it wasn't just a place, not just a trap, not just something to survive. It had done something else, something he hadn't done in a long time. He had kept someone alive, without breaking anything. By evening, they were ready to move. Not far. Just enough. The storm had left the road barely visible, but passable if they stayed careful. Elliot helped Martin into the truck. Rex watched from the side, forcing himself upright despite the injury. His body trembled slightly, not from fear, from strain, but he didn't back down. Iris turned before getting in. "You're not coming?" she asked. Elliot shook his head. "No," she frowned. "You can't stay here," she said. "Not after." "I can," Elliot cut in. Not harsh, just final. Iris studied him for a moment, then nodded. Not because she agreed, because she understood. "Then leave the light on," she said quietly. Elliot didn't respond, but she didn't need him to. The truck disappeared into the tree line. The sound faded quickly. And then, nothing. Just the wind moving through branches. Just the snow settling. Elliot stood there until the silence settled again. Then he turned back. The cabin looked different now. Still broken. Still uneven. But not abandoned. Elliot worked through the remaining daylight, reinforcing what he could. Clearing the collapsed section. Bracing the frame with salvaged wood. Not rebuilding. Not yet. Just making it hold. Rex stayed near the door, lying down again once Elliot finished wrapping his shoulder properly. The dog didn't complain, didn't whine, just watched. At dusk, Elliot stepped inside. The light was already fading. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the lighter. For a moment, he hesitated. Then, he didn't light the fire first. He found the lantern, set it near the window, filled it, adjusted the wick, and struck the flame. The light rose slowly, steady, visible, not just inside, but out, through the broken frame, into the clearing, into the trees. Elliot stood there, watching it. Then he moved to the door and sat down beside Rex. The dog shifted slightly, leaning into him. For the first time since all of this started, Elliot didn't feel like he was passing through. A sound broke the quiet. A feint. An engine. Elliot didn't move. He listened. The sound grew closer, then slowed. Somewhere beyond the trees. A vehicle. Not entering. Just stopping. Watching. Elliot didn't reach for anything. Didn't hide the light. Didn't step away. He stayed where he was. Rex's ears lifted. Alert. But calm. The engine idled for a few seconds longer. Then moved on. Gone. Elliot exhaled slowly. He didn't need to see who it was. He already knew what it meant. He looked out at the snow, at the trees, at the place that had been chosen for him. Then he spoke. Not loud. Not for anyone else. "They didn't have to kill me," he said. Rex didn't move. They just had to pick the right place. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the light further into the dark. Elliot's gaze didn't leave it. But they forgot something. A pause, quiet. "Certain. Some people don't die there." He rested a hand on Rex's back, the dog's breathing steady, alive. "They stay," Elliot said. His voice didn't rise, didn't harden. It settled. "To make sure no one else does." The light burned steady, and this time, it wasn't just for him. Some places are chosen to break you. Not with violence, but with silence, isolation, and the quiet expectation that you won't make it out. But this story reminds us of something simple and powerful. You don't always get to choose where you're sent, but you do get to choose who you become there. Elliot wasn't saved from the storm. He wasn't rescued from the system. He stayed, when leaving would have been easier. And in that choice, a place meant for death became a place that gave life. Maybe in your own life, you're standing in a place you didn't choose, a season that feels unfair, heavy, or impossible to understand. But what if that place is not the end of your story? What if it's where your strength, your purpose, your light is meant to appear? You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to be perfect. And sometimes, just staying, just holding on, just being there for someone else is enough to change everything. If this story meant something to you, share where you're watching from and what part stayed with you. And if you believe that even the darkest places can hold light, consider subscribing to follow more stories like this. May you have the strength to stand where it's hardest, and the quiet courage to become a light for someone else when it matters most.